Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right, everybody. Thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show where I read a lot of comic books, and I'll let you know what I thought about them. But before we get into that, I gotta give a mighty, hearty, and welcoming station to David Hatch. You know him. We love him. Everybody. David Hatch, been supporting us over at patreon.com/PCP since we started patreon.com/PCP. So thank you so much, David. It really means a lot to us, and we appreciate juking and jiving with you every week when you come into the shop. Anyway, let's move on to the pick of the week. This week's pick of the week, The Dreaming Waking Hours, number 6. I wasn't expecting this to be the pick of the week either, but after really sitting down and thinking about it, a lot of great comics this week, this to me was the best one. I loved it. So if you haven't been reading The Dreaming, so they just recently finished their first story arc. Now, I do believe that we got confirmation the series is going 12 issues, so we're at the midway point. So I guess in between two big stories, they're doing the small story, and this is the first part of it. It picks up on one of the characters from the initial arc. It picks up on some things from Neil Gaiman's Sandman, as it should, because it's The Dreaming, but it's still like in a more concrete type way. I was fascinated with this issue. The writing was solid, like it has been. G. Willow Wilson did a great job. Javier Rodriguez, oh my goodness. The artwork in this book is freaking phenomenal. The composition, the coloring, the way the story is told, the way that he uses the organic images and even the more structured images to tell the story. The use of color is amazing. It's striking. It's beautiful. And the story matches it too. This makes it the pick of the week for me. This has been a great series. I think an undersung series. If you like Neil Gaiman's Sandman, if you like Simon Spurrier's Dreaming series that just wrapped up not too long ago, this is a great follow-up to all of that. Intriguing characters, imaginative plots, whimsical stories, and amazing, innovative, and creative artwork. The Dreaming, Waking Hours, number 6. My pick of the week. I'm surprised. Dark Knight's Death Metal number 7 is here, though, with the nice metal foil cover. I loved this. This is the final issue. I just am enamored with Death Metal, and I love the ending. Scott Snyder's been telling us a story, about DC, about big two corporate comic book superhero mediocrity. It's telling a story of we're trying so hard to have so many stories, so many voices, that we forgot to have the connection to the root of it all. And I think that's what Death Metal's getting to here. Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, having fun, playing with all the toys in the toy box. They destroyed the toy box, by the way. It's so much fun. I love it. I like the big, epic, boisterous, crisis-level events. To me, this was very satisfying, and it sets up a lot of possibilities for the upcoming DC Universe. That's what one of these events should do, but overall, it should be fun, and it should have a little bit, at least, of an emotional core to it, some kind of a meaning, and I think that's what Snyder, Capullo, and company have done with Death Metal. I applaud them. I had so much fun. It was wild. It was all over the place, and I'm glad it's over and we can move on, but I really, really thought that was a very solid ending, and I'm really looking forward now to reading Metal, Justice League, Snyder's Justice League, and Death Metal. So much fun. Generations Shattered is here. It's a giant epic one-shot. Allegedly, so when they were going to do 5G, DC, when that was the plan back last summer, they were going to release a free comic book day called like Generation Zero. Then they were going to release a series of one-shots. Generation 1, Generation 2, Generation 3, 4, and 5, right? So allegedly, what this one-shot is, and it's massive, I think it's $10. Yes, it's a $10 epic one-shot. It's hefty. There's a lot of stuff in here, but I don't want anybody thinking that they have to read this in order to make Future State make sense post-Death Metal. That is not the case. You don't even have to have read Death Metal to jump into Future State, which it starts this week. We're about to get into it. Generations Shattered, though, was pretty nifty. I liked it. I had a lot of fun with it. Allegedly, it's bits of those Generations one-shots kind of amalgamated back together in a weird way. Dan Jurgens kind of leading the charge there. We got Robert Venditti, Andy Schmidt. You got a lot of great artists on here. John Romita Jr. doing a great job, way better than his recent Superman work. Ivan Reis, Kevin Nolan, Doug Braithwaite. There's some really interesting ideas and concepts and nice returns to some old school type characters. But basically now, post-death metal, the DC Omniverse is back alive. We're almost back to a pre-crisis type level of things in a way, just meaning that there is a multiverse, but it's not a very strict multiverse limited to a certain number of worlds. But you don't need to read this to understand that. I think this is going to be people that actually enjoyed things like Convergence and Zero Hour. It feels like one of those things. It does not have the impact of something like Metal. It does not have the epic quality. It is kind of thrown together. It feels thrown together. It feels all over the place. But I personally had a lot of fun with it in the type of way that I can have fun with stories like Convergence and Zero Hours. Basically saying it's not good, but hardcore DC fans might like it. Let's jump into the future state stuff. We got the next Batman. So this is, no spoilers here because we already know this. This is Lucius Fox's son, one of them, who was the next Batman in some point in the future. Now, here's something to avoid some confusion. A lot of these future state books take place at different points in a possible future timeline of DC. That's what it is. This is set, I believe, 5 years from now is the idea. Something's happened to Bruce. He's not Batman. Now we got Tim Fox as Batman. This was a really solid, great issue. The Batman story. The Batman story was super solid. It's written by John Ridley, artwork by Nick Darrington, coloring by Tamara Bonvillain. Yes, that's the exact same art team from Gerard Way's Doom Patrol. So yes, definitely the artwork is fantastic in this book. I love the colors. I love the sense of pace and flow. Great characterizations, a great narrative. I was really, really hooked. The problem is, this is a $7.99 book because there are 2 other stories in here. 2 full-length stories. One is an outsider, so it's the outsiders of the future. And in this world in Gotham, really interesting concept to me and what makes this world and fleshes it out so well is that it's kind of like there's this thing called the Magistrate. And they have orders. They run Gotham now. They're the law enforcement of Gotham. There is no police department. They've privatized it out to the Magistrate. And they have orders to shoot anybody in a mask on sight. And it's because they have all this facial recognition technology like Minority Report or something, right? And of course, they've outlawed vigilantes. So that was a really cool, interesting world that they built. And these other stories are set in that world. So they kind of fill that out, and that's a thing that you're going to see in some of the backups in the future state books. At least that's the theme coming through week 1 so far. But the Outsider story I really liked. Great for Katana and Black Lightning fans and Duke Thomas fans. Really interesting stuff going there. The last story is Arkham Knights, and it's the Arkham Knight and a bunch of Gotham villains kind of doing their thing against the Magistrate. I wasn't really digging on that one. It wasn't for me. So that being the case, is it worth $7.99 for one really solid Batman story? I don't know. That's up to you to decide, but I really, really like the Batman story. The Outsider story is pretty cool. The Arkham Knight story is, Future State Harley Quinn. Y'all, I loved this issue. I can't believe it. I am blown away with how much I love this issue. It's written by Stephanie Phillips with artwork by Simone DeMio. That's the artist from We Only Find Them When They're Dead, but it's colored by Tamara Bonvillain. I really think the colors pop, and it helps the art pop. And it's got this great, like, almost cyberpunk, futuristic anime-type vibe to it that I just found very, very compelling. The basic premise of this is that the Magistrate is hunting down all of these vigilantes, all these costumed heroes and villains. And they enlist Harley Quinn's aid for time off of her sentence to help them figure out where some of the villains, where they are, how they can catch them, things like that. But it's got this fun rambunctiousness to it. Harley's character is not overly obnoxious like Deadpool-like or anything, but a little bit more balanced, a little bit more tolerable, at least for me. I know a lot of people like the character. I'm just trying to say, this is the first Harley Quinn solo book I've read that I've really enjoyed in a long, long time. I really like that. That was great. Swamp Thing. Future State Swamp Thing, Ron V. Mike Perkins starting their hopefully historic run on this character of Swamp Thing. This is Future State. This is set way further in the future than any of the DC Future State stuff, I think, that comes out this week. But in this world, humanity's kind of like almost died out. And now Swamp Thing has a race of like swamp people, and he's out on a mission trying to find humanity. But there's a lot more nuance to that. It's written by Ram V, and you know how much of a fan I am of his work. He does a great job of doing tribute to what came before, especially the Alan Moore stuff. You'll notice exactly what I'm talking about there. Spinning new ideas, new concepts, but with a core emotional weight, an anchor that holds it all together, and a really cool setup to what's to come. I thought this was great. Ram V, Mike Perkins, they're going to continue work on Swamp Thing. Most of these Future State teams are continuing their work on the titles proper in March after Future State's over and the regular DC titles resume, because there are no mainline DC titles for the next 2 months except for these. But this Swamp Thing one was really cool, really awesome. I thought it had a great take on the Swamp Thing mythos. Wonder Woman. This is the debut of the brand new Wonder Woman, Yara Flor. She's got a HBO Max or CW show or something coming out already. There's going to be an ongoing following this at some point, written and illustrated by Joelle Jones. Artwork was super clean. You could tell at times in Jones's Catwoman work that her artwork was starting to feel a little bit rushed, a little bit pressed to deadline. That's gone in this Wonder Woman. It feels free, it feels loose, it feels fun. I really, really like the artwork. And by the way, Mike Perkins' artwork in Swamp Thing is super, super solid. But I really, really enjoyed this book. I thought it was a great setup for a new character. She is a Wonder Woman or whatever. She's like an Amazonian princess, like for real, like from the Amazon, from Brazil, the Amazon or rainforest, right? So it's a new character. She's got a connection with the gods. They explain that. They explain the connection of the cultures of the gods. But she's got a great attitude. Not a great attitude. She's got a great character, and her attitude's portrayed in such a different way from Diana that I found it kind of refreshing. And I really, really liked this character. So I'm excited to see the future of this character. The book itself was very clean. And that's something I'm going to point out about these Future State books, is these teams had a lot of leadway, I think, into this, and you really feel the energized nature of the creators. They're a little bit of a younger class, a little bit more maybe hungry to sink their teeth in these characters and make their statements, but the art, the writing, everything, the coloring, everything about these books so far, the energy level has been really, really high. It feels exciting. The artwork does. The artwork's popping. The stories are a little bit bold at times and different. So now we got Superman and Metropolis. I was really excited about this one. It's written by Sean Lewis. He's written a lot of other indie work that I really liked, like Thumbs and The Few. Superman of Metropolis, though, was just okay. It's set a little bit further in the future. Jonathan Kent is Superman. Brainiac is attacking Metropolis, and Superman does something really crazy to save Metropolis and bottles it, like the city of Kandor. So it's got some interesting ideas, and it's got some neat character moments and some nice revelations of a possible future of the Superman family and the mystery of where Clark is, and that will be addressed by Philip Kennedy Johnson. The artwork was okay at times. It felt a little stagnant and stiff. But the story just felt a bit too dense. It felt like it was a little too verbose, a little too much of a chore at times to get through certain pages, a little too much exposition in a non-exciting way. So it just kind of bogged it down, and I thought this one was just okay. It has some backup stories as well. 2 backup stories, pretty much directly related to the main events of the story, the bottling of Metropolis. One is a Guardian story that I really did like. I thought that was pretty solid. And it's got artwork by Cully Hamner and Michael Alon Oming. And then there's a Mr. Miracle story, and it's Shiloh Norman. I thought that one was pretty solid. So I actually thought the backup stories were stronger than the main story, but there was still enough there for me as a big-time Superman fan to kind of like, I'm going to stick it through these Future State books. But this one is a little bit more expensive. I think it's $5.99. Yes, it's $5.99 because it does have those 2 backup stories in there as well. Then we have The Flash from Future State. I'm not trying to be too, negative, but to me, the Future State, The Flash was trash. I did not like this book. If you do not like the way Wally West has been treated over the last few years at DC, this ain't going to make you feel any better. And there's a little twist in here and there, but it's not going to make you feel any better. I did not like this one. I think The Flash has been not in a good direction since Williamson left. I think it needs to find a good, solid direction. Future State's obviously not necessarily where that's going to happen, but this one did not do much for me. The artwork was decent. The artwork was fine. It had that energized feeling that I was talking about, a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more just amped up, but I was just not digging this story. I felt it was just dumb, just absolutely dumb. Stump. Let's jump over to Marvel, where we have the Eternals #1, a new launching of Eternals because there's an upcoming Eternals movie. Now, what is the Eternals? Who are they? They are characters. They were created and established by Jack Kirby back in the 70s over at Marvel. Now, I've really never read a lot of the Eternal stuff. I just know of them through, the Marvel Universe. And I've read like the first issue because they did that facsimile, and then I actually picked up a first issue. But I've never read any of the other stuff, but I really am excited that there's some collected editions coming out, especially a collected edition of all the Kirby stuff. So Eternals, and I've read the game and stuff, and I've read, the Austin stuff. The Austin stuff was terrible. Anyway, we're talking about Kieran Gillen's Eternals, setting it up for a new generation to come into the comic books and see if they care about it this time. I love Jack Kirby, but this was never something that it didn't ever really seem to pop as much as like New Gods or something, right? But what do we do here with Eternals? Well, if you don't really know much about the Eternals, you'll learn a little bit about Eternals in this book, but you really won't learn too much. And even if you're familiar with the Eternals on a casual level like I am, you're not going to really learn too much about what this story's about, what's going on. It seems like the whole purpose of this first issue is to introduce or reintroduce the Eternals to the audience. And okay, it does that a little bit, but it does it in a really slow, murky, and dark type of way that I don't know if it didn't come across as exciting. It didn't come across as something fresh. It didn't come across as something vibrant, right? It came across as kind of dull, trying to be a little Hickman-esque, and I do like Gillen, and I know that he probably has a long-term plan. This book may pan out to be something spectacular. But the first issue, to me, was kind of dull, kind of long-winded, but at the same time, not as revelatory as it should have been, or even as introductory as it should have been. Whatever. The artwork by Assad Ribic and Matt Wilson is pretty solid, but at times just a little too murky. It doesn't have any of that polish and shine of Kirby. There's not a lot of Kirby that seems to be in here, except for some of the concepts, obviously. And not being as familiar with Kirby's Eternals as I am other bits of his work, I don't know how much of this is Gillen and how much of it was from what Kirby did. How much of it's an interpretation, how much of it is an update, I have no idea. The book itself, though, kind of fell flat, didn't really excite me. I don't know if that's good. That's good. I don't know. And you would think that somehow they would know the direction of the Eternals movie coming up, right? And maybe that's somehow in there. And I'm starting to, I think they're Game of Thrones in it, but we'll see what happens. Star Wars: The High Republic. I don't really read a lot of Star Wars books right now, but I wanted to check this one out because it was a new #1, and it's The High Republic. I have found out through the PCP Army that this represents the Old Republic. So what I know of as the Old Republic is now going to be dubbed the High Republic, and they just started a new, officially canon series of novels and comic books, and probably will lead into other things like TV shows and animated series and toys and lunchboxes and all kinds of stuff. So, get in on the ground floor here in comic books. This will definitely have some first appearances, right? I found the book to be okay, tolerable. It felt like an average Star Wars book. It was decent. It was cool. It did a great job introducing the characters, having a nice little plot, establishing a base of operations, a point of significance for the story. And then setting up a mystery toward the end. And it also did something exciting, which was a one-and-done story, in which there is just one story that's told here in this first issue, but a lot of development for things to come. This felt very old school in that way, so that was kind of exciting. It wasn't bad. It was pretty solid. Star Wars: The High Republic #1. Thor #11. Donny Cates has a week this week. Thor #11 was pretty solid. The next part of Prey, Chapter 3 to be exact. This is the story in which Donald Blake, who's been switched off into this other dimension, has gone crazy. This entire time that Donald Blake's been just not around, he's just been in this dimension going crazy, and now he's finally made his plan come to fruition. He's swapped places with Thor, and now he's just raining havoc. He's taken out Asgard, and now he's setting up some... Donny Cates, after the loudness of the previous issue, he does it in a more subtly menacing way in this one, with the conversation between Donald and Jane, for instance. Really cool, which does remind me that I didn't get a chance to read King in Black, Return of the Valkyries. I thought it was in my stack. I get home, it's not in my stack. So we'll cover it Wednesday night on Talkin' Comics Live at 7:30 Central Time. So Thor number 11 really does a great job of taking the same menace, but into a different, more subtle, more indirect type of way, getting a bit more creepy and building out that story. And it's got a really, really fun ending that I think a lot of people are going to enjoy because I enjoyed it. Donny Cates gives us some really good endings this week. Then we got Venom. Venom number 32 is okay. So this directly follows the events at the end of King in Black number 2. If you weren't aware, Venom was falling to his death, and then something happens. This picks up after that. And if you're not aware, don't worry, Bueller will spoil it for you. But I thought this was a pretty solid issue. It was decent. This is going to be one of those stories that we get all the time of a journey that's important maybe to the character in some sense. In the midst of this big crazy event of King in Black, this is a journey for Edward Brock that will probably come full circle and swing him back around, right? And ultimately, it won't be essential necessarily, but maybe if you want if you like King in Black, you might want to read this. I liked it. I thought it was cool. Had some pretty solid artwork. Did some things with the story that were interesting. I'm digging it. I like it. That was a really awkward way of saying I liked it. Symbiote Spider-Man, the King in Black, issue number 3. I didn't like issue 1. I have not been liking Symbiote Spider-Man. I like Peter David, but I don't really like Greg Land. This was some better Greg Land artwork, though, in this series, I would say. I thought the first issue was okay, but the second issue kind of was a little bit more exciting. This one, it gets a little too kooky, a little overly so at times. That's something that's Peter David is kind of prone to at times. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. With a character like Kang, it just strikes me as kind of a little off, but this doesn't have a super connection to King in Black at all. In fact, I'm not even reading all these tie-ins. I'm done. I can't do it. I just can't do it. After Empire, it broke me. But anyway, Symbiote Spider-Man King in Black number 3 was okay. It was all right. It's not essential to King in Black. I don't know. It was just okay. It was just all right. MODOK Head Games number 2 is here. I'm loving this. So this is a 4-issue series. It's written by Patton Oswalt, along with Jordan Blum. Scott Hepburn on the artwork. I really like the artwork. It's got a fun, zany feel to it. It's a book that doesn't take itself too seriously, but at the same time, it's not betraying the character of MODOK. Now, of course, you got Patton Oswalt as the co-writer, but him and Blum do a great job of, like I said, not betraying the character, but doing something fun and quirky, having lots of throwbacks to old school stuff. We got Silver Centurion up in here, baby. Silver Centurion up in here, baby. That was some real fun stuff. This is a nice, fun team up between MODOK and Iron Man. And this issue alone has really, really made me really want to make a goal this year to get all of the Toy Biz Iron Man line, because I just got some pieces, but I don't have them all. But I really love that MODOK book. Hellions number 8 is here. I'm having so much fun with Hellions. This is written by Zeb Wells. The artwork by Sokovia is absolutely fantastic. It's got a nice, fun sense to it. It doesn't take itself very seriously at all. So at the end of Ten of Swords, you had a bunch of these characters that died, like Orphan Maker, Nanny, and Wild Child, but they got resurrected, but because they died over in Amenth, like, they come back way different and way badass. They are such a treat in these last couple issues of Hellions. But this book continues its, like, Expendables type nature, being fun, being loud, being action-oriented, but with a lot of humor and death and blood thrown in there. Hellions I'm having so much fun with. Issue number 8 out this week. The Amazing Spider-Man 56, called Last Remains Post-Mortem. This Marvel at this point is trolling us, y'all. You realize that, right? Seriously. We're already complaining about how long and drawn out this story has been. All this Kindred stuff, right? It's been long. It's been drawn out. And then they add these point issues in. They did that with Hunted. Don't forget, they've already done that. Then they did the point LRs. Okay. Stretching. Then they give us the finale last week, the not a finale. And then they have this Last Remains post-mortem. Y'all, they're trolling us. This issue, what does it do? It tries to explain why there wasn't an ending in the last issue. Does it do it successfully, in my opinion? Hell no, it does not. I really don't want to read this book anymore, but I'm going to continue doing it. Why? so you don't have to, so that I can let you know the moment that it is good again. Though some people have been saying it's gotten better, I disagree. I think it's false getting better. I think it's all a lie. It's all an illusion. I think this is one massive troll from Marvel. They've got to be shitting me. Are you serious? Post-mortem? Last Remains post-mortem? 56 issues, plus like probably 12 point whatevers. Are you serious? Post-mortem. 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 Fuck you, Marvel. Miles Morales Spider-Man 22. It's an okay issue. The artwork is decent enough, but it's kind of simple and it's not really exciting in that comic booky type way, that superhero comic booky type way. It's got some nice turning points in the story for Miles, for his journey, for his dad especially. I'm really glad that somebody's finally addressing the quirk, the weird oddness of this dude's name, Jefferson Davis, and finally addressing that. So that was pretty cool. Aside from that, it was all right. There's some nice turning points, and there's an upcoming King in Black tie-in that it starts leading into towards the very end. Some Miles life moments happen in here, but nothing big outside of that. But it was pretty decent. It's okay. Miles has been kind of decent. That's what it's been doing. Miles has just been kind of decent. Juggernaut's here with issue number 5, final issue. Though it does set up a really interesting idea. If anybody wants to pick up on it, including Fabian, for another Juggernaut or maybe a Juggernaut team book in the future, I like Ron Garney's artwork. I like Fabian Nicieza's work. It feels old school. It was nice. I thought the artwork was solid. I thought it had some nice moments with Kane Marco. There's a great moment here with Black Tom and Kane that I really appreciated. Because, you know, Kane's not a mutant. He's not welcome on Krakoa. But Juggernaut number 5 was a pretty solid, I would say, finale to a pretty solid miniseries. From Aftershock this week, we have Scout's Honor number 1. This was a really cool concept and a really great execution for an issue number 1. This is written by David Pepose. David Pepose has been on the show. You should definitely check it out if you haven't already. But he's done amazing work in the past, like Spencer and Locke and Going to the Chapel. Scout's Honor's got a great concept. What if in a post-apocalyptic world, right, the last dregs of humanity band together to rebuild civilization? And what sacred scripture do they hold up to build their society on? The Boy Scout Manual. That's a fantastic idea, and it leads to this crazy world of survivalist culture, and it's just wild and fun. And it's about the journey of this one character trying to find their way into this organization, and then a secret about this organization gets revealed that really is about to set the series off on a great path. I think David Pepose is an amazing writer. His writing is highly showcased and specialized in Scout's Honor. A great job of introducing the concept, the characters quickly, efficiently, leanly. They're compelling. I'm engaged. The artwork's by Luca Casalanguida. I hopefully did not butcher that name too bad. Coloring by Matt Milla. Carlos M. Mangual on the lettering. Everything about this book was top-notch, pitch perfect. I loved it. Now, here's something about Luca. Luca was the artist on the recently concluded Lost Soldiers with Alesh Kott. In that book, a completely different style. A completely different style. But look at this. It's beautiful. Great colorings. This is like Chris Samney level of storytelling through the action, through the dynamicness of the layouts. Even when people are just standing there talking to each other, the book feels so energetic and just filled with energy. Energetic and filled with energy. Great job, Robbie. Scout's Honor was really, really solid, and it was really a great concept, and it did deliver on that. Hell yes, it did. Knock 'em Dead number 2 is here by Elliot Rahal, Mattia Monaco. I thought the first issue was pretty solid and pretty decent, but you kind of had to read into the solicitation to kind of really appreciate, I think, and understand what had happened at the end of that issue. It's about a stand-up comedian who literally dies on stage. Maybe makes a deal with a devil, something like that, right? It's still a little bit vague at times, or maybe I just wasn't paying enough attention. But Knock 'em Dead number 2 was really solid. I thought it was actually better than the first issue, and I thought that was a great first issue, but I thought 2 was even better. The artwork is a little bit more cohesive, a little bit more together. It's flowing better. The story's flowing. The dialogue is so sharp, so clean, and it's exactly what I love out of Elliot Rahal. There's this deepening, darkening mystery. It gets foreboding, and it takes a turn towards the end. I'm really excited to see where this book is going to go. Knock 'em Dead number 2 from Aftershock. Elliot Rahal and company. Let's jump over to Image because we got Donny Cates here with crossover number 3. Look at that. The Todd McFarlane cover. It's Spawn. And she's reading a Spawn comic book. Now, there's other little variants where she's reading crossover, Savage Dragon, Nowhere Men. Nowhere Men? Don't put it on a cover if it ain't going to come out, Image. But other things, too. I think God Country might be one of them. No, I think that's just on the back of the crossover. But other Shadowhawk, Cyberforce. I thought issue 1 was pretty decent. I didn't really like issue number 2. I felt like it was a lull. Now, a lot of people in the comments said, Donnie always hits a lull in issue 2. It's issue 3. And if you look historically, it's issue 3 where the story really kicks it up. Boy, were they right. Crossover number 3 was frickin' awesome. I loved this issue. Now that we've taken the time to introduce these stories, these characters and this concept that literal comic book superheroes have crossed over into reality and are now in this bubble trapped with a lot of people for years over Denver, Colorado or something, right? And the world that has built up around that. So all these characters now are starting to hit this path on the journey. And now it picks up the pace and it starts happening quickly. Pieces get moved in certain positions emotionally and just story-wise through the narrative. The artwork gets sharper and cleaner and leaner and meaner and other things that rhyme with "eener" that are positive. But crossover number 3, to me, and I said Donny Cates really nails some of the endings of his comics this week. He really nailed it here. I cannot tell you how freaking excited I got when I got to the end of this comic. I leaped for joy. I loved it. I loved it so much. Thank you, guys. Thank you all so much. Station for crossover number 3. I love this book. That's the best turnaround I've seen. From a really low review of number 2 to just, that was almost the pick of the week. It's very close. It is very close. Firepower number 7 is here. Immediately just keep them going. You know, a lot of these Image books, when they get to the end of a story arc and they release a trade, they kind of wait. Nah, they're like, Firepower trade, boom. Now next story at the same time. So Firepower number 7 kicks off the 3rd arc, technically, because of the Prelude graphic novel, which if you've been reading Firepower and you haven't picked up that Prelude graphic novel, you're selling yourself short. You really need to, because it's starting to really pay off all that character building and world building that they were establishing in that book. And also, once again, at a ferocious pace. Now, this one is a little bit more exposition-y, a little bit more talky, a little bit more like what we can be more accustomed to from Robert Kirkman, but the artwork's still cool. I'm really liking it. Chris Samney's style is not as crisp as it typically is, especially, on this book, as it typically is to others. It's almost got this a little bit more of a grit to it, which is an interesting thing that I just started to notice. So I don't know if it was like that in the early ones, but I'm loving it. I love the textures that the coloring by Matt Wilson can provide. But this was a really cool setup for the start of the next story, and I'm loving the hell out of that book. It's so much fun. Getting it together, number 4 is here. This is the final issue by Sina Grace, Omar Spahi, Ginny Define, and MX Strubel or something. I really like this book. It's very slice of life. It's about 20-something-year-olds trying to find out who they are, what they want to do, where they want to be, who they want to be with, who they don't want to be with. It's kind of like Friends, but if Friends was a bit more real, you know what I'm saying? But I really like this, and they really brought to a conclusion a lot of the characters' arcs towards the end of issue 3, and they kind of wrap that up here, but then they really take the time to focus on the main character, I guess. I viewed this as more of an ensemble piece, but then putting the spotlight on the one character again and letting her story finish out was really, really cool. I found it to be actually very inspiring. It was a really great comic book. Getting it together was one of the most real comic books I've read in a long time, meaning like, this is how people act, this is how people feel, this is how people are. And I get that out of Getting It Together. That's the final issue, and I had a lot of fun with that one. The Last Witch is here, a brand new comic book from Boom Box, actually, so it's kind of like a middle-age type thing, PG-13 and up, you could say. The Last Witch was fine. It was pretty cool. Nice little light fantasy. It's about these children that live in this village, and there's this tale that there's this tower out past the hedge line, out in the deep forest, and they're not allowed to go there because there's this tower, and the Last Witch is there, and one day a year or something, she comes out and she eats children. Right? But it's about these kids and they just want to go on an adventure. Nobody really believes this except for certain people. They're kind of superstitious about it. But this girl's got a mark. She wants to go on an adventure, but she's got this sickly little brother that's trying to tag along. And it kind of gets into predictable modes, but the characters came across as rather charming. This was a rather charming book. I liked the artwork. It had a nice, simple animated movie type style, but it did a great job of capturing that tone, keeping it going all the way through. I thought it was a pretty solid book. It's definitely appropriate, I think, for like 10, 12 years old and up. I think adults can like it, especially if you're a fan of fantasy, you know, of like a light little fun, like witch story in the forest, kind of like, I'm getting a Hansel and Gretel type vibe from it, but maybe a little bit more elaborate, a little bit more of a Chosen One type vibe, because you see she's got lightning hands there. That doesn't happen in this issue, so I guess covers a little bit of a spoiler. Just noticed that. But McCreary, Glass, and Nestorenko did a really good job on that. I thought it was pretty cool. Not as solid, I think, as some of Boom's other debuts universally of late, but a really solid book that I think is appropriate for a lot of young kids as well. The Resistance Reborns. This is a one-shot, the start of a series of one-shots, I think. It's written by J. Michael Straczynski. C.P. Smith now is the artist of the Resistance. Mike Deodato has moved on to start doing more of his own stuff with AWA. So this is a one-shot. So in the world of the Resistance, there was this pandemic that hit, and a lot of people died, but the small percentage that lived, the small percentage of them developed superpowers. So now it's about the world afterwards, after this pandemic has ravaged it, and now you have the emergence of these superpowered beings. I thought the Resistance overall was kind of dull. I really liked the first issue, and it started losing me. It got a little too much into the politics of the situation. Not that it was an overly political book or anything, just meaning the politics of the world, of what was going on politically during all of this. And it took the focus to me away from the superpowered beings. Now the focus is more back on the superpowered beings, because this is a series of 5 stories, each focusing on a reborn, on somebody who has been reborn post virus with powers. Okay, the stories themselves are actually pretty good. Some of them are pretty strong. Here's my problem with this book. My problem with this book is this. You see these layouts? Now, I didn't look into this, so I can't verify. And by the way, C.P. Smith's artwork is fantastic, and the coloring is great. But you see this? Do you see what I'm seeing? This feels like this was designed to be read on a phone. Doesn't it? Why are you wasting all this space? You're just giving me, yeah, it's a big, thick issue, right? But not really. There's not a lot of content, because there's literally like 3 panels per page, sometimes just 2, sometimes just 1. Now, I like the splash page. I like experimentation. But this feels like they took the format to read it on a phone and didn't do anything to convert it. Like sometimes when things are done like that digitally, like some of the DC ones, like the Batman, the animated adventures, the adventures continue. You can tell that that's, done like this, and they just put it together, and it kind of takes away from the idea of composing an entire page. What is it? This you're just giving me a series of panels. This is like it's reading on a phone. That's annoying. That was obnoxious. That really took away from what would be a rather decent review of The Resistance, which I wasn't even planning on reading. And then I saw the artwork, and I was like, yeah, let me check it out. Let's see what's up. Anyway, that's what I read. That's what I thought about it. So, Last Witch, pretty decent. Crossover blew me away. Donny Cates had a great week. Venom's pretty solid. Thor was great. But man, that crossover blew me the frick away. High Republic is okay. MODOK still cracks me up. Hellions. Amazing Spider-Man. Post-mortem. Future State, overall pretty solid. I would avoid Flash. Maybe not Superman unless you're the biggest fan, but Swamp Thing, Wonder Woman, Harley Quinn, and Next Batman I think are pretty solid buys. Generation Shattered, only if you like Convergence and Zero Hour. Death Metal rocked. And The Dreaming, Waking Hours was the pick of the week. Crossover just beneath it, but that was real. The artwork on that was magnifique. Anyway, thank you so much for checking out the video. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Click the notification bell so you don't miss a single video. And join us over at popculturephilosophers.com for podcasts, blogs, and a whole lot more. I've been Rockin' Robbie Billups. Thanks for rocking with us. Keep on reading.